Hey y'all, welcome to the Prolific Shift Sunday Sit Down episode 10 on August 29th, the second Sunday of Virgo season, the last Sunday of August. I'm Janae Peters and I'm the founder, CEO, and whatever other creative thing people use to say that they did a thing. Prolific Shifts is the thing I'm doing. Remember, this space is a space for everyone, anyone who's willing to engage in some inquiry that helps lead to some shift or some kind of change or even just some creative energy in your life. The main portion of Prolific Shifts is a cohort community that really focuses on Black educators and personal and professional development and community and collective care in that realm. So I'm kind of excited to get into what I'm getting into today. Last week, we focused on the end of the Zora Neale Hurston quote, "There are years that ask questions and years that answer." We focused on the answer piece. And that was my partner. So Lance, my fiance, said, how about next week you get people to really think about like what they're doing and how they've done it. So that was very much inspired by him. And the question was, have you done what you set out to do and how do you know? So it's not meant to be a shaming question, but it's an assessment question. So maybe the outcome of that is, I keep saying I'm going to do this thing and then I don't end up doing it. I would think about what you are doing, what joys you are finding. And the action item that came out of that was to create an intention around what's next for you. At Prolific Shifts, we're shifting always and in all ways. Tagline again. This week, I think we're very much in the same vein. I'd say so. I think this is in the same area. But this week's question is, what's the best piece of feedback that you've ever received? So as an educator at the particular school where I am right now, so I'm on the design team, founding faculty for a brand new school. And one of the things that we're doing differently, one of the ways in which we're disrupting education is by taking grades out of the equation for high school students and thinking about what feedback really looks like and what kind of feedback actually helps to create the conditions for growth and development. So with that being said, feedback is increasingly, to me, not a bad word. But I think sometimes we receive feedback or someone gives us maybe not just compliments, maybe some sort of harsh feedback even. And sometimes we just shut it down. We're like, so-and-so said this and forget them. I know if you're anything like me, it's easy to be like, who are they anyway? And there's some truth to that, right? So there is something that is true and protective and important about that. Forget their feedback. And then there's other stuff that sometimes it hits us and it hits deep, right? There might be a visceral reaction because it's striking a chord, right? It might be something that we know about ourselves. Maybe we're not quite ready to go there. Maybe we don't want to do anything about it, but we know that there's something in that that's true. And if we don't know here, if we don't know intellectually, we might know emotionally. Or if we know emotionally, we might not know intellectually, but we feel something when we hear that feedback. When I think of the best piece of feedback I've ever received, I feel like in the past few years, I've received such good feedback from people with whom I feel like I'm in deep relationship. And so it's hard to really choose just one. And I think for the sake of this, and maybe for the sake of openness and encouragement, remember, y'all aren't on these videos. So what you come up with, that's your stuff. And how you come up with it is good. I'm always thinking about what I offer here. I always have maybe 5-7 answers to each question that I offer. For the purposes of this one, though, when I think about the best feedback I have ever received, I think I was telling one of my mentors recently that sometimes when I procrastinate, which is maybe all the time, I guess it depends on how you see things. When I think of the ways in which I've created balance, I think what that also has meant is that sometimes work has very finite times. So work happens in this time because I'm making other time for choosing people, cultivating my relationships and such. But what it really means is that oftentimes I'm working at a deadline, right? So I might have a due date of Monday at 11 a.m. for something, and it is not out of the realm of possibility. It's actually entirely likely to find me at 10 a.m. on Monday doing that thing. And because that has been a mode in which I have operated for, I don't even know, y'all, for real, forever. In my mind, there haven't been really any consequences to doing things any differently. And I told one of my mentors about this, and their response was, well, there's always a consequence. The question is, what kinds of consequences are you acknowledging? And that inquiry, that feedback was what I needed and more, because your girl just started crying. And I started crying, which is not my normal mode of operation, but very much I think what I needed to do. But I started crying because I really thought about like what it means when I'm working against a deadline like that, the level of stress I'm holding, maybe the terseness with which I respond to text, or my unavailability even for that amount of time, because that's the only time I've allotted for something. And I can make any argument about boundaries. I can make any argument about almost anything. But the biggest truth is I was out here for years saying that there haven't been any consequences, when the biggest truth is that the consequences have been my relationships, right? My friendships, my siblingships, my daughterships, there have been a lot of consequences. And that feedback was a game changer for me in taking stock of how the narratives that I create about my modes of operation and their effectiveness and impact. And this is like one of my hardest lessons. And so this kind of feedback is actually among the most useful for me, because it's one that I almost need kind of drilled into me. Left to my own devices, this is not something that I can shift on my own. So I'm offering that to you. And then again, you can take some feedback. It doesn't have to be critical feedback. It could be positive feedback. So what's the best piece of feedback that you've ever received? Okay, so before we head off here, remember that this week's question asks, what's the best piece of feedback you've ever received? If you don't feel comfortable with that best word being in there, you can change it to most important, most useful, worst, whatever it is that you need to explore. Go ahead and do that. And then the action item is to take 3 pieces of feedback that you've received and spend some time with them. And that's vague on purpose, right? So if you don't have your supports lined up or accessible, you might not want to go into some critical feedback or feedback that you know is going to hit you heavily emotionally. If you do have those supports in place, go ahead and go for it. You know what you're ready for, and work that out. It then asks you to assess them against your own sense of yourself and your values, and to work to come to a thoughtful conclusion about what, if anything, is useful in the feedback, or what you learned from it. So then I'm going to ask you to write and talk with a loved or trusted one about how and where you want to hold what's useful, or if you want to hold what's useful. And I would say also what you want to throw away. Okay, so heading off now, and looking forward to seeing y'all next week. Take good care. As always, I'm happy to be in thought partnership with folks. If not, just make sure you're in thought partnership with someone. All right, peace. If you liked anything you heard, please don't hesitate to comment, like, subscribe, or support in any of these ways, and especially through your love and care. Peace, and I'll see y'all again soon.